annoy. Another reason you want to allow people to be able to pick up right where they left off. There could be a technology failure, and this is one of those things. Error prevention recovery. Not everything is an error made by the player. Some things are errors made by the technology. You want them to still be able to recover from that where possible. And one of the ways that they can recover from that is to let them pick up where they left off. I have to restart that entire level over again. Whereas if it was auto-saving at certain points, or well, letting me save, I wouldn't have been able to because of the error. But auto-saving at certain points would have let me pick back up after, for example, I had already found the altar to... I already found 2 altars. Now I have to go find them again. I don't want to. Honestly, I don't feel like it right now. So that keeps me from continuing the game. So let them pick up where they left off. So that they can keep playing the game and not get frustrated. Okay. Rose Thorn Bud. So this is, again, a quick and simple method for people to use in a critical thinking, critical analysis about an experience of any kind. It could be experience a game like we're talking about now. It could be how you work with your teammates on a project. How did a project go? How did working with this client go? And this helps you critically think about it. And then at the end of it, you have a set of next steps, a clearly defined set of next steps. And so the roses are you talking about what went well, what didn't go, what went well, what was a highlight, what did you like? So that, what are the good things? And so then, because we want to think about the good things, because we want to continue on that path and thinking about those things. And then the thorns are what didn't go well. You don't want to just focus on the thorns. You want to focus on the good things too, for multiple reasons. To learn, okay, we continue doing this in the future. We learn from this. This is a good thing to continue trying. And then the thorns are the things that we need to figure out how to fix. So you want to focus on both, not just the thorns. So what did thorns or what did not go well? What was a low point? What do we not like? And then ideally for each thorn, you have at least one bud. What are the opportunities that you see? What would you do differently next time? What questions do you have? So buds are not just about fixing the thorns. They're also about next steps. What do we need to explore? What do we need to research? What do we need to verify, validate? And this will help you identify if you're planning usability testing or something on an experience, it'll help you identify what to pay attention to. If you are working with a team and you're trying to improve your teamwork and your collaboration, you would know what do we need to improve? What do we need to explore? What do we need to validate for working together as a team? So this is a very valuable exercise for anything, any kind of experience that you're wanting to evaluate and improve on. And the buds give you this very clear list of next steps. So one thing that people often do is mix up the thorns and the buds. And they'll put a thorn in a bud and then with the bud. But that muddies up the next steps. Or they'll put the bud in the thorn. And that'll get missed in the next steps. Because you want the buds to be a clearly defined list of next steps. What is it that I need to do next? So we'll go through that now with this game. So what was something that I liked? The music. And you'll pay attention. I like using Post-its because it keeps the points very short and concise. So we don't need a dissertation here. That can come later if needed. Right now, we're just doing points, short thoughts, and the Post-its help keep it short. That's why I like using Post-its. So music is successfully setting moods, tranquil versus unease and so forth, because we had that unease when we were seeing that calamity that was coming, or whatever they called it. And then it's definitely a very clean UI. No clutter. No clutter at all. Let's see, they teach the interactions contextually. I like that. And mechanics. When needed. When needed, first introduced. They're teaching it as you need it, instead of teaching you everything up front and expecting you to remember it all. They're teaching you as you need it, which is a good thing. And then, let's see, the environmental design. Is successfully guiding you. Is being used as wayfinding. As we saw. They're teaching mechanic, and so I do have another thought about the mechanics thing, is that we were talking about earlier, is that the difficulty curve, I'm thinking about how to word this a short, concise way. This is why I'm going quiet. Because what I'm talking about is the how they slowly taught you things over time, and the difficulty increased over time. So, and it built on what you learned before. Difficulty curve increased over time, building on, I'll just say that, on what learned before. So they did that successfully for the most part. Environmental design is used as your wayfinding. They do have, they include controls for accessibility or options, like settings. Well, at least for color blindness. I don't know about all the other accessibility issues. So if anyone's watching, what are some other roses? What can you think about? If you're watching this later on YouTube, you can add in the comments, what are some other roses? Because I'm going off of memory here, because I didn't write things as I was going. And that's another reason you want to take notes as you're going when you're analyzing something, is that so that you don't forget, you don't miss. I just haven't been doing it because of time, and because this is a stream that, but I can start doing that if that will help, because that is a practice that you want. So I could lead by example in doing that, taking notes. But again, you want those notes to also be very short and concise, and then record, because I'm recording as I play, so that you can go through later to validate, and then, or you may have to go back in the game to validate, but that is going to take more time to get back to the point that you need to validate. That's why you want to also record things as you play them, so that you can refer back, or you can grab clips to share to show what you're talking about. Or in the case like we had last 2 weeks ago when I was playing Nobody Saves the World, I came across a bug, and so now I have video clips of that bug so that I can share that and prove, hey, I'm not crazy. This really did happen. Here's your proof, kind of thing. So that's another good reason to record. So what are some other... Sorry, my headphones are hurting my head. They're digging into my glasses, which is hurting my head. Which is giving me a headache. Other good things. What are some more good things? The interactions are simple. There's not a lot of complex interactions. So that's all I can think about right now. I'm sure there are a lot more. It's like story's good. It's short. I think there's more to it than what's here because again, it only takes about maybe 20-30 minutes to play through this game from start to finish. Maybe an hour if you're like still discovering, but depending on how quickly you pick up on it, of course, it can last anywhere from like 23 minutes to hour, 2 hours, depending on your how quickly you pick up on how to do things. So it's a short game, and the story feels like a cliffhanger. It doesn't feel like it's done. So I think they might be adding chapters later. I'm not sure. I need to check the website. But that is another way to release games, is to release by chapter or episode. Vader Immortal does that as well. And episodes is a way to get your game out quicker and learn and iterate. Thorns are what didn't go well, what was the low point, what did you not like. So one of the things that I wrote down was the instructions are not always clear. So it's kind of hard to figure them out sometimes. And let's see, I'm kind of OCD if you didn't notice, lining everything up. Of course, it's not lined up to the grid, but I ignore that. The instructions were not always clear. The inconsistency in manual versus auto progression. Auto progression. Let me clarify. Auto progression of dialogue. Made me miss important. So this needs to also be in. Again, I keep catching myself on this. I make things in present tense. But teaches interactions and mechanics detachedly when first need. Difficulty curve increases over time, building on what's learned before. Environmental design is used as wayfinding, includes settings. Okay, I like doing it in present tense because this is the current state of the game. It helps me think present tense. It's just a mental thing. Helps everyone think this is the current state. So instructions are not always clear. Auto regression makes, so this is current state, makes me miss important story information. Which, and in this case, it seems like sometimes the story matters to what you're doing to help you figure out the puzzles that you're trying to figure out. So you want that to be manually progressed because I missed some stuff. And the only reason I knew what to do was because this was not my first time through the game. So I knew that I needed to find these things to unlock. I can't remember if that part was auto-progressed or not. But there were other things in the story that could matter. Like, I think they mentioned at one point going up and finding at the source to stop the water, to get the water flowing again. How do you do that? And there was some dialogue that was talking about it, about the history and so forth that I missed that may have helped. But again, they did help with the environmental design did help still, in spite of that, help you find where you needed to go, which was a good way of error prevention, I guess. But it would be good to let them not miss the story. So some other things were, and that had to do around auto progression, NPC behaviors. So, well, that was a rose. The NPC character designs next to dialogue help convey tone and mood, as does the music and the lighting. So I'm going to just say music and lighting are successfully setting moods, tranquil versus unease. And NPC character designs next to the dialogue help convey the tone and the mood. Because again, not everyone will be able to hear what's going on. So what are some other things that we can do visually or so forth that can help them understand the tone and the mood? And this is, I talk about this in one of my videos. I can't remember which one. They're all starting to like blur together for me because I've made so many. But I talk in one about hearing, not being able to hear for many reasons. One could be that it is a, which video was that? I made a video and an article on it. And it could have something to do with the external distractions one. Don't remember. But there are many reasons that someone may not be able to hear. So you want to accompany things with visual and haptic and environmental cues. And the NPC behavior, the character design when it's next to the dialogue box is helping convey the mood and the tone. And the lighting helps convey the mood and the tone in case you can't hear, because there's many reasons you couldn't hear. For example, right now, my head is hurting because the headphones are digging into my glasses, which are then digging into my head and making my head hurt. So when I'm not streaming, I'm taking the headset off, and then I can't hear the game unless I turn on my speakers, which I don't like doing because I'm not the only one here and I don't want to bother everyone else. So then there are many reasons that people are not going to have sound, not just accessibility reasons. But if you make a game designed for accessibility, then it's going to help a lot more people than just those with accessibility issues. And you can learn more on my YouTube channel. I have a link to the channel called Ally VR, which talks about accessibility, especially specifically for VR. Anyway, let's get back to Thorns. What were some other Thorns? Anyone watching, feel free to add some. Motion sickness, definitely a thing. Movement, camera movement. So, inability, because I'm going to say why. To fully control camera movement is causing motion sickness. So let's see. It's risking motion sickness for those that are like more sensitive to it. And this would be something to pay attention and study including in a 2D game, because if they're going to have an issue in a 2D game, they're definitely going to have an issue in VR, for sure. So then that would be something to follow up on. That would be a bud, because that would be what's a question. So follow up on that would be study this, test it, and what can we do to design it to make it different. So one of the things that I do in games is that being able to zoom out the camera so that I have a bigger view of the world is causing less motion than when it's zoomed in. So being able to zoom out more reduces that risk of sickness for me. Because there's another game that I play quite a lot that I keep zoomed out because of that. Yeah, it keeps me from being able to see my cool character, but it also keeps me from getting sick and quitting the game. So there's that. Another thing would be another thorn. The auto progression I already talked about. Load times. Well, let's see. So Rose would be that they music or sound effects, I think it's usually water, continue to play when next scene loading. However, a thorn is that there's no visual load time indicator when new scene is loading. Makes me wonder if the computer is freezing, because audio can continue playing when it's frozen. So just having the audio again is not the full solution. You want multiple cues. NPC behaviors was a good thing. Training was kind of good thing, except for the instructions weren't always clear. I can't think of a ton of bad things about this game. It's a good game. Most part is good. There was a potential bug. Yeah, I forgot about that. There's a potential bug. And again, I talk about bug reporting in more detail in the Nobody Saves the World. And if you check the timestamps, you'll see you can go straight to it on YouTube, where I talk about bug reporting. A potential bug: can't change language back to English. In the settings, it's stuck on French. And that is audio, voiceover language. To clarify that it's not the UI language that I changed. I didn't try the UI language. I'm afraid to now, because of that. I can't change it back. That is it that I can think of for Thorns. If you think of more, again, post them in the chat or in the comments in YouTube if you're watching it later. Now let's talk about buds. And again, buds are what are opportunities? What would you do differently? What are some follow-up questions that you have? What's something to keep in mind? So instructions are not always clear. I accidentally hit a cable. I hate that there are so many cables still on everything. And I almost hurt my computer. Hopefully my mic's still working well, because that's the cord that I hit. So opportunities. Instructions are not always clear. I would say because it seemed like the reason that the instructions were not always clear was partially because of a potential language barrier. but I'm not sure if it was because of that. I don't know why it was, but I would say work with let's see. I'm multiple thoughts are going on in my head. So you would want to. There are multiple things that you'd want to do. You would want to get preferably a UX writer. On the wording. And you would also. Why is this freezing now? Come on. Why is my technology being so much of a pain today? I don't know why my technology is being such a pain today. So you'd want to work with a UX writer on wording, and you would want to accompany instructions with visuals. But I do like how the tooltips were non-intrusive. That's it. That's a rose. But still noticeable, perceivable, and that was something that we mentioned in the clear signs, clarity. Still perceivable, but they're not intrusive. I can spell perceivable. And then you want to accompany instructions with visuals. How can you do that and still keep it non-intrusive? That would be a challenge. So that would be a question. So I would add that here. How can we add visuals while still keeping non-intrusive? Because we like that it's non-intrusive. So another reason you want to do the roses, to remember we don't want to change that. And then inconsistency in the manual versus the auto progression. Well, those are two different thorns. So let's see. That they may have the same bud. Allow option to manually progress dialogue. And that will solve everywhere there's dialogue. That's both. That solves both of those. And again, if you think of more buds, add in the comments or the chat. as well, because this, I'm wanting you guys to get practical experience with this. The inability to fully control the camera movement risks motion sickness and give player control of the camera and let them zoom out more to reduce movement. I'm going to say consider, because again, there is this issue with cameras, and we saw it a little bit in this game too, is like you've got physics, you've got colliders and so forth in your game, and when you move the camera, if it's hitting one of those colliders, there's going to be a sudden zoom in or out on something. When you move around those different colliders on your objects for your camera, you want those colliders there, because otherwise you're going to be seeing through models, and your camera's going to suddenly be stuck inside a model instead of the environment, and that's an issue you see in a lot of games. So the fact that they have the colliders there is good. So then if you're zooming out, that motion in and out is going to be a lot more drastic and could be a lot more annoying, and that could also risk sickness. So what is the solution? Seeing if there's a way to detach the character from the camera would be one. There are games that do it, and we're going to be playing one next week, but then that game also has certain limitations. There are ways to do it, though. So then that's the challenge. And this would be a consider. So we don't want to prescribe. We want to explore the improvements. We don't want to always prescribe. If we know that it's a best practice, yeah, sure, because that's the best practice. But if we're not sure for various reasons, we don't want to prescribe that. We want to test it. We want to research it. So I would say explore options for detaching camera from player character. And then give player control of the camera. That is the best practice for most of the time. However, sometimes it's not. That's why we think about these in context of what we're doing, because it's not always the case. There are multiple times I've come across where, yeah, that applies 99.9% of the time, but then there's that 0.1% time where, no, that's not going to work here. So we need to be flexible. We need to be open to that. Because there are the times when that does happen. The more you know, the more you practice, the more you study, the better you'll get at understanding when that is the case. So no visual load time indicator when a new scene is loading. Makes me wonder if the computer is freezing. And this is a best practice to accompany. So use multiple methods of feedback, visual, audio, and so forth, to let them know the scene's loading. And then there's this potential bug that can't change the voiceover back to English, and I would just say, fix the bug. follow up with a bug report would be the next step there. And you would want to, in that case, and we talked about it in Nobody Saves the World, the fact that I have it recorded helps. And you would want to include that clip in your bug report if possible. Especially if you're working on a team project, you can, and you would want to include that recording. And that's why we like to record when we're playing, is so that we have that record of things. And we can also, it also helps us to refer back to something without having to restart playing the game like we were doing here. There was some kind of graphical error, and I would have had to completely restart that level because they didn't have a save feature. So having video, we can just go scrub the video and see what happened instead of having to go back and play the game, which can take more time than scrubbing a video. That's a reason we record while we play anything that we're reviewing. So that is a good practice to have.